Wes Cravens'
The story from a movie.
New Nightmare. Feature Maker.
So Wes Craven's New Nightmare is the sixth film in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, written and directed by Wes Craven, starring Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp as, their respective characters. Actually, they play themselves in this movie. Robert Englund kind of does double duty. He plays himself as Robert Englund, and he's also playing himself as Freddy Krueger. And Heather Langenkamp plays herself in a sort of fictionalized version of her life. Actually, this movie was based off of some of the stuff that was going on with her at the time, and which she had like a stalker, and Wes Craven had an idea for this script that's kind of like a precursor to Scream, which came out a few years later. I'm not sure what people's thoughts are on this movie. I've heard a lot of people favor the later sequels, usually the third or fourth one, or seem to be mostly people's favorites. But I'm not sure. I think this movie, when it came out, I think it was sort of in a way ahead of its time because it was very meta, and it's like explaining the stuff about the movie. Like he's writing a script, and a lot of stuff that's happening in a script are happening in real life and stuff like that. So I think this movie was, like I said, ahead of its time because then Scream came out a few years later and started poking at the tropes of the horror genre and stuff like that. So in a way, it was sort of like the big older sister to Scream. The cast and everything is pretty good in this. You have, like I said, Heather Langenkamp comes back and she plays, herself in a way, and she has a husband who is actually, funny enough, her husband in this movie is actually a effects designer or works with the special effects and stuff. And her husband in real life is a effects person. He's actually was the same people who worked on like Cabin in the Woods, I think. So that was some of his effects work, or his studio at least. And of course, you got Robert Englund coming back as Freddy, which it's anything I say won't be any different from what everybody else says. Robert Englund kills it as Freddy. When he was in that Goldberg, the Goldbergs episode where he plays Freddy again, he's even good in that. So he's just born to be Freddy. Like this character is just so much of him, and so he's great. And you also got young Miko Hughes, who was in Pet Sematary. The original Pet Sematary, the son of Heather Langenkamp, and he starts having all these weird nightmares and sleepwalking, and he starts saying really creepy things about there's a man under his bed and all this stuff, and it's a very disturbing. This movie is very psychological. There's a lot of build up to like the Freddy reveal. Like you kind of see little glimpses here and there, and like the him, his like this stasis of being sleep deprivation and stuff like that, and a lot of cerebral things that are going on with her, and these weird occurrences that are going on are like all, weird coincidences. And like I said, some of she having a dream that two guys who worked on the crew died from, they died, and then in real life they died and stuff like that. And so starts having these weird visions and stuff, and it, of course, corresponds with, real life events. And so this movie, like I said, is very dark, very like kind of disturbing. And once you get to the Freddy stuff at the end, like I said, the hospital scene is really good. Then you get to the end, you get into that dream world, that that realm, his realm and everything. And some of the stuff, like some of the effects are a little bit cartoony, like him stretching his mouth and stuff like that. It's a little bit cartoony, a little ridiculous. And my only complaint is that the ending of the movie feels like kind of rushed. Like I said, you get a lot of build up. Like I said, I don't know, I forgot how long this movie is, but like it feels like it needed like another at least 20 minutes to have a good, or for me to have a satisfying ending. But it's good nonetheless. Like I said, I really like this movie, and I haven't reviewed the other Nightmare on Elm Street films, so this is kind of a weird spot to start. But I want to talk about this movie for a while actually. So yeah. New Wes Craven's New Nightmare was a fun movie. Is from @reallyOldMovies on Instagram, and I asked him, like I said, send him what is their favorite horror movie, or what if they had any questions for me. And they said they weren't really a fan of horror movies from the modern age, so they did recommend a classic. And what they said was Dracula 1931 is a classic, and I would recommend it. Dr. Cabinet and Dr. Caligari, both these films created the genre of horror in my eyes, and is still used to this day for inspiration. And I think that is very correct. I think this movie, a lot of movies definitely take inspiration from those films. Hell, we have a lot of, like I said, German expressionism. Even though we don't call it that today, we have a lot of lighting effects. Edgar Wright very much uses that for his movies. Did it for Nosferatu. Nosferatu, that's a, German expressionist type film. And like I said, Dracula. We have a lot of like our image of what Dracula is like the Bela Lugosi, adaptation is so, I think, ingrained in our minds and what we think a vampire should be like, even though it's technically not accurate to that character in the book, like I said, the look-wise and everything. I think definitely that is a good choice, and definitely would say those are films that did create the genre and do have a lot of inspiration and pigeonholed into a lot of the vampire werewolf type movies that we get today. Again, thank you, Really Old Movies on Instagram, for that. I'll put his information down in the description below. Check out stuff. He posts stuff about old movies, TV shows, and stuff like that. And posts a lot of historical stuff. Movies probably you've never heard of or seen before. So definitely give his stuff a look, see, listen, and everything like that. And let's get back to the video. So yes, this is the start of the 31 years of horror. So this is, like I said, this film starts in 1994, and we're going to end in 2024 on the 31st. So stay tuned for the reviews. Like I said, I'm going to have one coming out every day this month, so check out for those. Plus, we might get some other reviews here and there, maybe some new movie reviews. We'll see. Like I said, stay tuned and look out for the 1995 episode coming out tomorrow, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.